slides with us. I want to tell you a little bit about our speakers first. Dr. Susan Luo has been teaching at the IEI since August of 2014. She has a PhD in language, literacy, and sociocultural studies, and specializes in TESOL and adult language learning. Susan has taught in China and New Mexico and in the United States. She also speaks, New Mexico in the United States. She also speaks Mandarin Chinese. Her hobbies include traveling and hiking. She recently spent 3 weeks teaching ESL in Kazakhstan. And fun fact, she is good at cooking Chinese food. Who's surprised? Professor Nidia Flis, who says she is good at eating Chinese food, has been teaching in the IEI, first as a graduate assistant, like you guys, and then as faculty member since 2011. She has a master's degree in TESOL from Ball State, which she did on a Fulbright scholarship. Is it LASPAL? Do you say LASPAL? LASPAL scholarship. Nidia has been an ESL instructor for over 13 years and has taught English at all academic levels. She's worked as English coordinator in a bilingual school and as an ESL instructor for international students. And she recently taught ESL in China and India. And her fun fact is that she loves to dance. Is that part of the presentation today?
Is there a dance at the end of the presentation? We're all going to do it together.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the beginning of our presentation, I want to just show you a short YouTube video. All right?
All right, so today we're going to be talking about the United States. Let's start with, what country do you live in?
I live in my grandpa's store, in my grandpa's musical store. The United States.
How many states are there?
Well, I've never counted them, so I'll go with 39. How many states are this United States flowers?
Okay, name one state that starts with the letter I.
Illinois. Fable.
From Oakland to Sacktown, the Bay Area and back down, Cali is where they put they Mac down. Give me love! What state was Tupac talking about in this song?
Justin Bieber. Can we win?
You know, while we're on that note, is Tupac still alive?
Yes.
Where does he live?
He lives in Hakasimo.
What is the most American thing you can think of right now?
A toilet. Aurora.
Who's Aurora?
Aurora's in her castle after she goes get food.
How many stars are on the US flag?
39. 1, 2, 3.
I want you to finish this song lyric, okay? The land of the free and the home of the...
Lyrics? United States.
What is America's favorite pastime?
Computery.
Computery? All right, last question. Name one place in America that you would never, ever, ever want to live.
Mexico! So hot there.
All right, apparently 2 native speakers, their children, 2 years old, a little girl. So she is not able to produce complete sentences yet. But when she used, where does the grandma live? She said, naturally, she lives in, and she goes. Okay, that verb S is so natural for her. Really amazes me. I will show you 2 more examples. My level 2, level 5 students writing, and they're 18 and 20 years old, non-native speakers.
It's easier when I'm using my computer.
Yeah. There, okay. That's a typical sentence from my students' description after they take a listening class. So the video talk about. The next one is a screenshot. Actually, we got this sample writing from one of the professors we observed. Singular S. Pursues, is, are, subject and verb, agreement. Sometimes people ask, what you do in IEI? This is what we do. We improve our international students. We try to push them to be as a native level. Yeah, okay. So at the beginning, I just give you guys a brief introduction about IEI because we had a questionnaire. Some of the answers is I don't know what IEI does. We have 7 levels from level F to level 6. Level F students, they probably don't even know A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So basically, they have 0 knowledge of English, but we accept them. We teach them from the beginning. To level 6, usually it's called bridge level. Students at that level can take IEI classes and academic classes at the same time. And we offer 6 courses, writing, grammar, vocabulary and literacy, speaking, listening, and reading. So that's basically 6 courses. In each level, every day students will have 6 different classes from Monday to Friday. Because we're talking about the transition between IEI and English 103, that's the 2 classes Nidia and I observed. So today I want to focus on writing a little bit. So for IEI, we have a lot of outcomes for each course we're teaching, but basically for the writing, because I teach writing a lot, so I summarize the writing part as expectations for writing. We use 3 major standards to evaluate, assess students' writing performance. Number 1 is language control. Number 2, content. Number 3, organization. All the instructors are supposed to cover language control, content, and organization in each class. But for writing class, I see grammar and vocabulary and literacy, they serve language control a lot. For the content part, reading, listening, APA lectures, this part of lectures serving for content. Organization for speaking and the listening, because when we are teaching students speaking and the listening, we inform them different types of speaking and different types of listening listening, like problem solution type, drawbacks and advantages type. So when we're teaching them speaking and listening, all those transition devices are the focus. It's actually a way to reinforce students' understanding about writing organization. So the final goal at level 6, every student is supposed to write a well-organized 1,200 to 1,500 word research-driven academic essay that includes at least 5 reliable sources. This is our expectations. And the reality, language control, as some of you probably have noticed that, run-on sentences. This is my major issue with my students' writing. A lot of commas, a lot of meanings mixed up in one sentence, verb tenses, especially with the students whose first language has no verb tenses at all. That's a huge problem for them. Even still for me right now, sometimes when people ask me to describe a story happened before, I still struggle. I have to pay attention to, special attention to irregular verbs. That's for the past tense. And articles, a and the, too many thes, and not enough a and n, and n. The content-wise, number 1, circular argument, they're paraphrasing themselves. Students write a simple sentence, they worry. They worry we don't understand them. So they're paraphrasing, repeating the same meaning, write half a page, just write the same meaning. Stating obvious facts, this is also reflected by one of the professors we have observed. As I've mentioned, paraphrasing themselves. Disconnection between sources and their own writing. In IEI, from level 4, since level 4, we are teaching students how to connect sources with their own writing. But the time is not enough. And if we give students freedom to write whatever topic they're interested, it's very difficult for us, for ESL teachers, to track down if their sources are valuable or not. So basically, it's just for the appearance. We're looking at, okay, you are connecting your sources with your writing. If your citation and your own writing is too much, it's not connected at all, maybe we will, ask you to modify your writing. But for me, I can only maybe speak for myself. When students provide me some sources about computer or helicopters, I have no idea if that source is valid or not. So usually when I teach high-level writing, I provide sources for them. I know it's not great because students need to know how to search on their own, but at least I give them one sample. I provide second language acquisition articles because I know which articles are valid and reliable. All right, organization, understanding, so many students, they think academic writing are just 5 paragraphs. Introduction, body 1, body 2, body 3, conclusion. And they always care about how many words do they have to write. That's their organization. In their mind, it's just 5 parts. Whatever articles, whatever essays they're writing, they're going to go for that, go for the 5 parts. Okay, some of the reasons. IEI has a lot of international students are from China, and I'm originally from China, so maybe I can share some of my understanding of their academic writing with you. And I asked some students from Japan and Saudi Arabia as well. I don't know the other students from maybe South America, but at least. So misunderstanding of academic writing. In their country, they're writing for ESL teachers. So if Chinese students write in China, yes, they have 6 years training. They write for Chinese English teachers. What do they care? They care your vocabulary. They care about your sentence structure. Everybody has a simple content. They don't care about creative writing. They don't care about creative ideas. They just care about language control. In order to press the teachers, students think of some long, in their mind, the vocabulary, longer the better, because that's more difficult. And a sentence structure, what kind of sentence structure is complex? Adjective clause, that which who. Because that's fancy. That sentence, you can stretch your sentence longer, and the native speakers use which a lot. In their daily life, which means, which refers, yeah, that must be a nice sentence structure. But every time when they write which, they make mistakes. Yeah, that which who. So, and right now, most time, after they finish IEI, yes, when they're studying IEI, they write for us. Yes, we do check. We do check language control. We do check ideas. But when they are out, a lot of professors are looking for ideas. They're looking for content. Can you come up with some, original ideas, creative writing? They care about content. So they have this kind of concept. Then when they are facing a new idea writing, they usually compose this writing in their native language. Then they translate. And when they're translating Chinese and English, the sentence structure is not a match. So of course you will see a lot of strange sentences. It's very natural because their content is not trained. This part is not trained. They have to use their first language to come up with the content. And makes things worse is usually in their culture, same thing here in Saudi Arabia, same thing here. When they write content, they like writing big ideas. Everybody wants to save the world. Yeah, how to improve Chinese students' speaking problem, how to improve Chinese students' writing problem. Because one essay, you can solve all the problem in China. Yes, that's how they were taught to write general ideas. But here, the content is specific, it has to be meaningful, it has to be based on your observation of your social problems. So that's a big change. That is a big change for students. So if I have them, I always, at the first few times, I always change their mind about academic writing because there are just so many misunderstandings about academic writing. And the native language influence, including language control. You have probably heard that Chinese, there is no tense. It's I eat yesterday, I eat now, I eat tomorrow. We only change time word. The verb tense is always the word eat. So it's very difficult for students to change it back to I ate to I will eat because they only change the time word. The content, the same thing I have mentioned, because in their training, the content is save the world. You have to write big ideas, general ideas. You don't have to focus on specific ideas. When they write, that is hollow, that kind of content is hollow, and they assume all their instructors are still from China because they have sentences like a hot pot is so good that Mao Zedong used to like it. Okay, who is Mao Zedong? Who is that again? Everybody should know that because he used to be the Chairman Mao in China. But he didn't know, they didn't realize their readers are not Chinese anymore. I can understand, maybe Nidia, you don't know who Mao Zedong was, right? Okay, yes. So many examples like this. They are writing within their own
I
context.
just pronounce it differently. I mean, the wrong way.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a different person.
Right, right. So yeah, it's they're writing within their own context. They haven't jumped into a real English writing context yet. So I remember I have watched. It's about the context, about the different contexts will influence students' writing. There are many examples about that, right? If you just assume your readers are sharing the same background with you, then you think you gave great examples. Those are great. You seriously, everybody knows, as we all know with the technology development, everybody knows. How come you don't know that? They are frustrated. They think they have a good example, but they never thought about, some of students never thought about who my readers are right now, the Chinese or native speaker readers. That's the content part. And the learning environment, speaking and writing. I sometimes read a lot of articles saying a learning environment plays an important role for second language development. I agree. But for the writing part, sometimes I see drawback. They transfer their speaking to writing. It's like. Which and which. This word which, their favorite word, everybody's favorite word. Which means they write a lot of sentences, then they use a comma, which proves. They think using one which can summarize everything. Yeah, a lot. Right, and so on. There's a lot of reasons, so on. So we have struggles. Then Nidia and I went to, one summer, we observed 2 English 103 classes, and 2 professors were very friendly with us. We met them first. We interviewed them first, then we observed their classes for a summer session. Then in the end, I interviewed some students because that summer, I would say 95% students were from China, right? So I interviewed them. Some of them I used Chinese, some of them I used English. So those are our findings. So at least for those 2 professors, I cannot say for everybody's ideas. They told us plagiarism is not a concern for them. So at least in their mind, their Chinese students or English, international students didn't have this problem. And staying on the topic, good things first, staying on the topic is an advantage. They can talk about, if they ask a certain topic, their discussion can focus on their topic. But with depth or not, it's a different story. Yeah, stating obvious facts, I've mentioned that as well. Yeah, they're paraphrasing themselves, they worry we don't understand them. And synthesizing general knowledge, this part is influenced by their native language, and the sentence structure, their ideas, sentence structure are the major issue. And after I observe their classes, every time when I teach writing, I always focus on sentence structure. I said, you don't have to use complex sentence, vocabulary. Your first number 1 purpose is to make yourself understood. People understand what you want to say. They have no way to ask you. They're not available. It's on a piece of paper. They can understand. That's your goal. And for students, they reflected that they have problems to understand some terms. In IEI, we seldom use very big term. If they use a comma, only use comma to connect 2 sentences, we say, oh yeah, we need a connector here. Then it's and. But the professors in English 103 say, this is a comma splice, right? They use this term. Then it's the same story. But when this same mistake was labeled by a different name, students just get lost. They don't know what they're talking about. They think IEI and English 103 are not connected. They think they're learning something new in English 103. But when I was sitting there, we talk about that from level 2 to level 6, about the same thing, common splice. Don't understand professors' questions in class, and they don't want to ask. They don't want to ask, they don't understand, and that would be it. When somebody in the classroom would answer the question, they don't have to, that's okay. They do like it in English 103, no time writing, because in IEI they have time writing. They have 50 minutes, give them a topic, then they have to write an essay. That's why this organization misunderstanding came into place. Because in 50 minutes, usually we judge them by 4 paragraphs. Sometimes I think it's instructor's fault. Yeah, now I change it to parts. I never use paragraphs anymore. They said English 103 classes, they always have more time to revise papers. They can go to the writing center. Sometimes they'll go back to IEI to ask their writing teachers to correct it. And the last one is they feel especially very frustrated when the professor do not understand their writing. And I did read their samples. Most likely when they're using examples only exist or very often exist in their homeland. Yeah, this context influence.
All right. Now it's my turn. But you're doing such an amazing job. I mean, you can keep going. I'm having fun listening to her. Okay, so in the same line of findings, now I'm going to talk about class observations and then also some recommendations from these professors, recommendations for the IEI, recommendations to other professors, and then some conclusions that we came up with. So. The professors did an excellent job, like scaffolding the activities. Like we were able to see that natural progression of things, like going, from like step 1 to step 10. And we could also see that professors take into consideration their audience, because when they were talking about like cultural things, they would go above and beyond explaining, those things. Like we remember watching one class about music. The professor was using, music, like to draw like emotions, ideas, and that kind of stuff. So, and then he talked about the singer, from the 1930s, and then I'm from Honduras originally. I'm from the city where the caravan started. So I didn't even know those things, So even for me it was a learning, experience. And then, of course, the professor also gave like a little bit of background information, like history about that time, and even the dynamics between the races, blacks and whites, and where they will perform and that kind of stuff. Which the international students were all like, oh, okay, because we talk about those things, but not at length, I think, because we cover so much. So the professors did a good job, like trying to, explain those things to the students. Otherwise, they would have been lost for the whole time. And also, even linguistically speaking, sometimes they would throw in some terms, and I think they were probably looking at their faces, and some of the faces went like, and they would be like, do you know the meaning of this word, And they would write it on the whiteboard, and they would explain the meaning of the word. So, and then we saw our students, they were very attentive. They were always taking notes, okay? When the professors gave feedback, they gave really specific, detailed, thorough feedback. And we could tell that they were thinking of the international students as well. Like, we were sure that had it been just, local students, he would not be giving that kind of feedback. Does that make sense? And the students also had, class time to work on their papers, to ask questions, and the professors, moved around. They were working like in pairs or small groups sometimes. And, the professor would go and check understanding, and some students probably needed more help than others, so we saw that they spent more time with them. So they actually did like an excellent job, serving to the students' needs. Because I think to a certain degree, they might think like, we don't have to go through all these things, or probably they would not do those things. But thinking or looking at their audience and trying to just, reach out and help the students. So yeah, we were very impressed and we were happy to see that. And at the same time, to see all these people here, it makes us so happy because, yes, it's like you care so much about our international students, and we do too, so it makes us really happy to see all of you here. Okay, so now talking about the students, so they looked like they were paying attention, they were taking notes, they were not on their phones, which sometimes that's a nightmare. We really fight them. I even tell them that if I see your phone, I'm gonna grab your phone, I'm gonna sell it on eBay. You know? And they look at me and they put their phones away, and I'm like, that worked. And then I tell them, it's a joke. I'm not gonna take your phone. Just to avoid misunderstandings, right? So another thing that we saw is that sometimes they would like help each other in their native language, which we could see a little bit, I mean, the value of it, you know, because we could read the facial expressions going like, and the other one would be like, and they were like, okay. So we knew they were not talking about something else, and like checking for understanding, helping each other. But at the same time, if you have like two people doing the same thing here, two people over there, it gets, you know, it creates distraction. So that's not a good thing, you know, when it happens like all over the place, that's probably not the best. And also they were very quiet. You know, sometimes the professors will ask questions and they're just looking at them like, I think you have probably noticed that. And I think only the brave ones will be the one who wants to participate. And we, you know, had probably most of those students, so we were like, why is he so quiet? He was always participating in my classes. Why is she so quiet, you know? And that's, you know, and Susan asked them, and, you know, some of them mentioned, you know, as she already brought up, like, you know, they were scared or they were not sure about the answer. And also, some of them were very nervous because they were native speakers, you know. Like in our classes, they're all international students, you know. So it's easier, you know, they feel more comfortable talking because everybody makes mistakes. But now I'm around people who speak perfect English, you know. Or sometimes they would be talking and then people would be looking at them like, what are you saying? Could you say that again? You know. And then immediately they would just get quiet, you know. So if you have ever been in a similar situation, I think you understand what I mean. Like I've been in similar situations. Even sometimes when people ask me a question and then they ask me to repeat myself, I'm like, oh, I'm mispronouncing something, or I'm, you know, I have to double check my grammar or something like that, you know. And sometimes I will ask my husband, like, what did I say wrong? He was like, no, probably that person didn't hear what you were saying. And I'm like, no, you're just being nice to me. I'm not making dinner tonight. So, okay, so that was like some of the things that we were able to see. So we have some recommendations because we talked to these professors like at least 2 or 3 times, right? And so they have some recommendations, you know, for the IEI. Reinforced writing and grammar. And that is something that our directors have told us many times. As Susan mentioned, they have a writing class, they have a grammar class, but grammar is in everything. Okay, and sometimes the students fail to make those connections, you know. Yes, in the grammar class you added that S to the verb, he jumps. But you know what? When you are in your listening class and you're writing the sentence, you should add the S too. You know, so it's not just a grammar class, a grammar thing. Like grammar is in everything and they have to apply those rules. Like even if you ask them, you know, they verbatim can tell you the rules, you know, but then the actual application, that's the problem. And that's something that we all, you know, as a cohort have to work on that. Like we all have to keep reinforcing these things. And also go beyond the 4-5 paragraph essay thing, although we kind of love them and we work on them a lot. And I think a reason why we do this is we have, our sessions are shorter. We have 2 sessions in a semester. So, and we have like a number of outcomes. So we're always running, pressed for time. Like toward the end of the session, the students are happy and we're like, no, you're not ready yet. You know, like, I need 1 more week. But this is something we have to, you know, definitely work on and expand, you know, those papers more. But we were even thinking, you know, like the higher levels, you probably spend more time on their more quality, longer papers, if that makes sense. And also, yes, to use more English, yes, they are right, and that's one thing we talk about. And it's difficult when we have monolingual classes, like all of the students are from China, and it was funny one time, I remember having like a student from Saudi Arabia and then all of the other students were from China, and they're working in groups, and I'm like, hey, but if you speak Chinese, he's not going to be able to understand. You have to do it for him. And he looks at me like, I speak Chinese too. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, you shouldn't have said that. You know what I'm trying to do. And he was like, yes, I know. So, and I was like, well, do it for me then, But we have to be, I think, more strict with this because, and we have like a high tolerance for hearing other languages, like it doesn't bother us. We're used to it. But then other people are not used to that, and that really bothers them, and they have to be aware of that too when they're taking their classes, that, people are not going to be able to understand what they're saying, and they should use the language. And also, they are still learning the language, but I will talk more about that later. And those translators, yes, we ask them to put those phones away, I'm like, put your phones away, your iPads, laptops, everything away, credit cards, everything. Because they want to use it, but, they want to translate all the time, but that becomes, like a crutch, So those are the things that we should definitely continue working on. And definitely, yes, read and follow directions, yes. Check Canvas, well, at that time they were using Blackboard. And we have like a smaller assignments, and they're more often, and we're always kind of reminding them. But I think there has to be a balance, because otherwise we're not helping them prepare, be more responsible when they take their classes. They have a schedule that they have to follow, and nobody's going to be reminding them later. So there are some things that we need to do. Okay. And then now, recommendations like for you guys. Okay, so like what to do. So communicate expectations clearly, even if it sounds like I'm dumbing this down for you. No, it's just like to make sure that understanding is, even sometimes speaking with people who use the same language, there can be so many misunderstandings, right? So let alone with people who have a different native language. Reinforce grammar in class if possible. Okay. To provide feedback. Basically, these are like some of the things that we saw the other professors do that works, so they are giving the same suggestions, to you guys. And they have had a lot of experience teaching international students, so they know what they're talking about. And then the next point is empathy. Why do you think that's important? It's not a rhetorical question. Yes?
We're coming from a different place, a different culture, and everything's new and different, and they have to learn a lot, so it's probably a lot of stress.
Yes. Absolutely, yes. And you look like you had something to say. I saw like a light bulb. Yeah, you, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say a similar thing, that they're in a completely different part of the world, potentially, and that alone is a lot, let alone to be forced to be in an academic environment in a different part of the world.
Okay, yes.
Is overwhelming.
It is. Thank you, guys. You are exactly right. And the thing is that when we have an accent, we speak with an accent, we listen with an accent, we write with an accent.
That's true.
Yes, and we want to get rid of it. But there are reasons why we can't. And again, students are writing in a second language, and it's beyond the language, it's also cultural, it's like mental patterns, it's a lot going on besides all of the other things that you guys mentioned, right? And also, I think looking at the international students' value, that's really helpful. And you guys have noticed that value because in the Google Forms you mentioned, how interesting your classes are, how you can have different perspectives, how it's basically bringing the world to Muncie, right? So yes, there's a lot of value to that. And I think to be aware of that helps us to see that those people are making mistakes not because they're dumb, not because they don't care, because all of the other reasons that you guys mentioned. When child makes a grammatical mistake or a pronunciation mistake, it sounds cute, right? But then when an adult makes it, then it doesn't sound that cute anymore. And that's what I keep telling my husband, that he needs to correct me when I make mistakes. And they go like, I'm like, no, I'm a grown woman, that's not cute. I sound dumb, don't do that to me. So, and then when we look at an adult making a mistake, then in your mind as a native speaker goes like, why is this person making this simple mistake? Okay, and that brings to like a reflection of second language acquisition. So I know when people see me and they're like, oh, you have an accent, where are you from? I'm from Honduras, And I sometimes I don't think, they don't know how to react when I say I'm from Honduras. They go like, So, but they're like, oh, like you speak Spanish? Oh, yes, I do. And they tell me like, I took Spanish like for 7 years, and the only thing I can say is hola, Okay, so again, they said they took Spanish for years, and the only thing they can say is hello. One word, that's the only thing they remember. So that gives an idea how hard it is to actually become fluent in another language. Just if you have somebody like talking to you all the time and filling out some worksheets, that's not enough. And research has shown that for a person to actually become bilingual, it takes 7 years. But 7 years that you're immersed in the language, that you're actually doing the work and you have people to practice it with. And if you have taken classes, even if you became fluent and you stopped using it, what happened?
Oh, it's not.
And I think a lot of us have been there. Like I love, taking French classes, and I was able to communicate, and then now I don't practice it anymore, and I've forgotten most of it. So that's the worst part. Like it takes so much to learn a language, and then to to stop using it, you lose it so quickly. So, and also there's something called fossilization. Do you know what that is? When it comes to learning a language, I see some nodding. What's that? Yeah.
It's like you will have certain age to learn the second language, but if you go beyond this age, you might not able to reach that native like proficiency, English proficiency.
Thank you very much. That's exactly right. So when we talk to people and they're still making mistakes, probably those mistakes are fossilized, and that's the reason you're probably going to be able to break out of those habits because of the native language influence. So, like if in my native language I don't add s to the verbs, although I know the rule, if you give me a worksheet I can add es, change y to ies. But because my native language doesn't do it, then when I speak or when I write, I'm not going to do it. Okay, so, and that's why sometimes students are going to keep making those mistakes.
Can I add an example here?
Yeah, please.
The video I showed you at the beginning actually was submitted by one of my students. That's one of the small projects I did with them. I said, just go to look for videos on YouTube about kids talking. The children should be under 10 years old, and then pay attention to verb tenses. Then then look at your own mistake and tell me what do you think about that. And the student write reflections saying, yeah, the child can naturally speak S, and I am 21 years old. I still cannot put S on the verb tenses. It's a shame. Of course, my professors will not be satisfied. From now on, I should work harder on that. And it really worked. Really worked. This time, after I asked them to do that project, I'm not saying every student has improved, but I at least safely say 50% students, they do notice that. They do notice that. They began to pay more attention to this verb S. The only thing right now is gerund. Gerund use like speaking. When they use a verb, ing, as a subject, then they couldn't imagine that is a singular. Right now, that's still a problem.
Thank you. And then, so language and culture, that they are like connected, right? They go hand in hand. And even that choice of words, not only like grammar and vocabulary, even that choice of words, even like like in Spanish, you say, I'm going to take a decision, because culturally, we think that you're given options and you take one of them. So you can see that the culture influences, the language. But then in English, you say you make a decision, right? So, but then I know that by heart, I've taught that. But when I speak, a lot of times I say, no, I'm gonna take a decision because I don't think I can make it. Like I have these choices and I have to take one. So I know it, I've taught it, but I can't, I can't. And I won't, I guess. All right. I have a love-hate relationship with phrasal verbs. I will not say call off, I will say cancel. So, and I feel like sometimes even when I try to use them, I don't use them correctly. So then culture, influence language. And that's some of the mistakes that, students make. So, some conclusions. So, a lot of things students know, they have that knowledge, but they are not able to make those connections. So we kind of have to try to remind them, like, you probably know this, but you probably call it a different way. Or probably your teachers pronounce it in a different way, So they try to draw information out of them, like, do you recognize something from this or something similar? So they can start talking to you and they can start making those connections. Expect errors, sorry. They're going to keep happening because they are still learning the language. They probably spend like a year with us, but then that year is not enough. And we're just talking about the IEI students. There are international students that you have that they didn't go through the IEI. So we don't even know their experience and their background, okay? So, and there's some things like, just like when a native speaker starts learning a language, that they start getting certain sounds first, then the others, certain grammatical structures first, then the others. So the same thing happens, with adults. So they're still in that process, they're still learning, okay? If possible, don't be scared to dive into some grammar, it's okay to do that. Yes, please.
Yeah, for the grammar, I think after we read the Google form and the sentence structure, basically the core problem is grammar. Our suggestion would be encourage students to apply grammar. A lot of textbooks, actually, the grammar is only still on the identification stage. You give the students one sentence, if I had done this, I would have done that. Okay, students can identify that, no problem. If they spend some time, you give them some exercise, you give them the broken, fragments, put them together, they can. But if you ask them to use that, they don't know how. Is it purely their fault? No. Some part is our fault. I think it's ESL, our teacher's fault. We don't give them enough context to apply. So right now, if I teach passive voice, students have to write regulations for the library. So they would say food and drink are not allowed, or cinema. In a cinema, they have to write real things. If I ask them to learn adverb clause, if and when, they have to come up with traffic rules. If you see a yellow light, what do? What will you do? Everything, you guys are from America and you have a lot of examples. They're so authentic. Create scenarios, context, and encourage them to use that grammar instead of just doing exercise on textbook, because those are still just identification. Application is not involved.
Yes, thank you. And another thing is to help them to be more active in class. The one thing that we notice is that sometimes the professors will ask questions, silence, right? And that's one thing that we're also working on with our students, like that silence can be misinterpreted. That the professor can think, you don't know, you don't understand, you don't care, So that they have to participate, but they have to feel like it's graded, like they have to do it, because if they feel like they have to do it, they will do it. If they don't think that, if they feel that they can just kind of hide and you're never going to call on them, they'll be happy just to sit there. And a lot of it, again, it's cultural, because where they come from, the professor is your authority and they have all the knowledge and they're the light and everything, and they speak and you listen because you don't have anything to say. You just listen and write down whatever the professor says. So now they're in a different environment. So, and we're working on that in the IEI, but it's easier again because they are surrounded by international students and by people who have gone through the same process that they have, so they feel more comfortable with us. But then being with native speakers, they get very nervous. So, but keep encouraging them to, to talk. Okay, resources, and that's some of the things that you guys mentioned. That what other resources do international students have? So encourage them to go to a writing center. Okay, and probably in some cases it will have to be required for them to do it. And because they're not aware, a lot of times they're like, well, if I speak in the present tense and you understand me, then it's not a big deal. So, but then when you're writing academically, yes, it will work for certain kinds of paper, but it doesn't work all the time. So, yeah, you need help, you need to go get it. Okay? If you know of ESL websites that could be useful for them with exercises, we have a tutoring lab, and it's like around the corner, room 359. So we have tutors there, so they can come. Okay, and also the IEI instructors. So we are here, so feel free to contact us, and we can help, okay? And to hold the students accountable, that's important too. And again, there's gotta be certain balance. Of course they're going to still, they're gonna make mistakes, and sometimes they don't know what they're doing, but at the same time, they have to be responsible. They have that accountability as well, because they are still learning. And I don't know if you know Dr. Sai? Yes? She said this, and this is so true. She told us this, the IEI teachers. So like when the international students, they come to us, they are learning English. But then when they leave us, they're learning in English. So they are still learning the language, they're still learning the culture. So it's not like they just took a course and that's it, they're ready. Honestly, I don't even know how they do it sometimes. I think some of them are amazing. We had students that are married with children, and they take their classes, and in a year they're taking academic classes. If you throw me in China and give me a year to learn Chinese, to start, to speak and live in the environment and to write
College
college level, I'll be like, nope. I've been there and I learned a couple of things. I came back and I forgot what I learned. I just brought spices and did shopping. So that is so thank you for coming and for listening to us. And we have some time if you have some questions or comments you'd like to add.
You talked about observing a class that was 90% international students. What would you recommend if you had just one?
Okay.
Because that's what I have, and I it would be a different classroom if I responded to his needs and not everyone else's, but I want to respond to his needs, right? What should I do?
Yes. So I think like when you're working with him and giving him feedback, don't feel afraid to go and like talk about grammar, and also make the students see patterns, like what kind of mistakes he's making. Like are you having problems with sentence structure, or with writing complex sentence, or that kind of stuff. To make him aware of the mistakes that he's making, so he can work on them, and he can come to our lab, or he can go to a writing lab. Also in the writing lab, don't feel afraid. People in the writing lab, don't be afraid to go into grammar, and also make them see the kinds of mistakes they're making, so they can improve them.
Yeah, I want to know what kind of genres of writing the IEI students usually write, because I was doing a research project, so I got permission to collect some data from IEI. I noticed most of them they're argumentative essays, but in English 103 we're not just writing the argumentative essays there, so I want to know, can we have some some solutions there to facilitate IEI students.
Right, level 2, we cover 4 types of writing: process, definition, argument, and
Opinion.
no, that's argument, and like narration, right, 4 types, paragraphs. So it's at a very early stage, students should know there are just more than one type of writing. And the level 3, they focus on comparison and contrast.
Yes.
Level 4 is like argument. Level 5 and level 6, level 5 and level 6 is argument but with sources. So argument is one of the most important, focus for IEI writing. That's why you probably see that a lot. Maybe in our mind, we just think academic writing is all about why. But I try to tell them it's not just more than that, because when I was writing my dissertation, I wrote my story as a background. So I began to allow my students to use I or write stories in past tense and use different methods. But sometimes students, this is what I said, the organization misunderstanding. After they have been trained by us for a while, probably in their mind they just only think, okay, academic writing equals argumentation. Yeah.
And also they would have this kind of misconceptions like academic writing or good writing equals to grammar. And this is just not limited in ESL students. Most of my native English students, they have this kind of conceptions. So do you think if we kind of emphasize grammar in English 103 class, it will cause them have this kind of misconceptions?
So you mean for American students, their content, or for both, for international students?
Both. They would have misconceptions like, okay, a good writing equals to good grammar. I asked them, do you like writing? Most of them told me, no, I don't like writing because I don't have a good grammar. So also, because I'm also an ESL student, I teach English 103 class, and I also had experiences in language institution before. I'm thinking, can we introduce some knowledge like the rhetorical situations for the higher level of IEI students? That would be better to help them understand the knowledge in English 103 class.
Yes, and we work on that, and I think a lot of times it has to do with more than language, like culture, because like a lot of times they will write about like really obvious things, or they tend to go to the opposite and try to impress you, and like I'm teaching a level 3 writing class, so they have to write an essay, and they've written essays before in China. Okay, and so this is not like a completely foreign concept to them. So, and then I started with the first essay, like write about one significant event in your life. So, and then when I look at the drafts, they're like, well, I'm like, no, an event in your life. What was it? Yeah, when my little sister was born. What do you feel? What do you do? What happened? Don't tell me about other people, like tell me about you. So, and I think again, they're like, to write about me, So I think a lot of it's kind of cultural as well, because they're kind of trying to guess what you want from them or what their experience has been. Like, this is how I write for my professors back home, and that's the way I should write here.
Yeah. Also in our Chinese culture, we never learn something like ethos, pathos, logos. I know. That's why some of my students, they complain, I never know about this kind of information, but my native English the native English speakers there, they learned that in high school. They feel frustrated there.
I would add, I taught about rhetoric in 103 for the first couple of weeks, and my international student was held up by that word, and honestly was defining it for everyone. That's what we were working on, but he kept trying to Google Translate it and look up examples, and it said it was the wind on grass. And so he was so confused about everything I was saying, because the translation he got was wind on grass.
Oh yes, those translators.
Right, so
Yes.
that's a good point. Maybe you can share some of the terms very often appeared in your class with us, so we can
Yes.
consciously mention that when they're in IEI.
Yeah.
We might use easier terms for them, right?
But
Yeah,
I think
that's a good
vice
point.
versa is probably good as well to like to know how you're framing things,
Right.
so that we can also have that information to like, so that we're not both the same thing with what you brought up with the comma splices, so that we're not having that miscommunication because we're both talking around the same subject.
Right.
That would be really good, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, definitely, that's a good point.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if this is a possibility or not, but I'm really interested in knowing more about how you're teaching the students and like the terminology that you're using. Is it ever possible to observe one of the lessons that you teach?
Yes, yes.
So we could.
You can
we
even
could know
come to
and
our
see?
classes and
Okay.
observe, you know, the students and
I'd
yes.
love to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yes. You can bring food too.
Well, I think we're about out of time, but thank you again. I just wanted to say part of this whole project started to kind of draw more connections between the IEI and first year writing. So thank you for doing that. And then Catherine is our liaison to the IEI too, so she can maybe help us set up some more communication there. And if some of you were interested in observing some IEI classes, or some of your IEI people that want to observe more of our classes too,
Yes.
like that's something maybe.
If you are
Yeah,
interested in
yeah,
that,
no.
email me.
Yeah.
I'm KLUDWIG, K Ludwig.
Thanks everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend.
Have a good weekend.